And I think that that's such an important story because she is different than we might see others portrayed in politics. But I don't think she's a unique politician. I think the story of who she is being told also as a way of just demystifying what leadership is and who our leaders are. And, I hope that people walk away from this seeing themselves in her, not seeing her as somebody special or unique, but as somebody who puts people first, who is guided by that kind of moral courage, that cares about people, and that's why she does the job that she does. And I know that so many people in this room, that's why you do the job that you do, and that politics is a force for good, as Kate said, and that when we believe that, we expect that, and we encourage people to run, and we vote for them, and we support policies that put people first. And I think that, just that normalization is sort of what stuck with me initially.
And actually, that leads really nicely into my next question. One of the things that she said more than once in the film was the feeling of imposter syndrome. And she first felt imposter syndrome, I think she said at the age of 14. She said it again at the end. But she also talked about believing in your capacity to rise to the occasion and take on significant roles, which she obviously did. I wondered if you could each share some thoughts about what the film tells us about women's experience in leadership roles, especially as it relates to imposter syndrome and having the capacity to lead and the value of having women as leaders in politics and in all sectors of our society. So, Kate, do you want to go first?
Sure. I don't know about you. I found it really striking when we got to hear in the film her internal voice, and then see her in the public persona, even when she first became the leader of the party, and first became the prime minister. Those two moments, there's like a clip before that Clark had captured where she's doubting herself. And then she walks out and she said, I knew it was important for people to have confidence in me, and so she sort of put on, and none of us have served as the Prime Minister of New Zealand unless someone is here. But probably everyone knows that feeling, right? Particularly women who face other barriers. That feeling of feeling like you have to be something when you are not quite sure yourself that you are ready for that, right? And that's a socialized, that's a internalized bias that we have taken on. This is a well understood thing now, and this feeling that people have that they're not quite ready and that someone's going to stand up, as she said, in the crowd and call them out on it. She's just, I'm telling on myself here, I'm a total Jacinda nerd. She published 2 books this summer. One was a kid's book called Mom's Day at Work. Mom's Day at Work is the American version, Mom and Mom. And then she published a book called A Different Kind of Power. And it tells a lot of stories that if you love this film, you should definitely check out A Different Kind of Power. The thesis of the book, peppered with these stories, is that feeling self-doubt is a source of power. That feeling unsure makes you open to other people's ideas. It makes you better at collaborating. It makes you humble. It makes you empathetic. It makes you real. No other, we don't see videos of political leaders, in bed breastfeeding, the things that she was willing to share even in this film. And so the idea of being yourself, being real, and not having to feel like you are everything to be able to lead, to me is it is the wake up that we need about leadership more broadly. And I think it invites a whole group of people who may not feel like they're prepared to lead into that space by saying, if you feel like you don't have it yet, if you feel not sure, if you feel self-doubt, lean into it, go for it. And it's such a powerful example of how beautifully that can translate into even a role in the most senior political office.
Mm-hmm. Jen.
What you said is so leads right into what I was thinking in terms of imposter syndrome, and that imposter syndrome gets a bad rap because it's really, I think when you feel it, if you allow it to take it over, then yes, it can deter you from accomplishing your goals. But if you allow it to fuel you, then it does open you up. It does allow you to be open and to just succeed in ways that you didn't think was possible, right? And so in terms of leadership truly is that ability to influence. And to influence, you have to be able to connect. And to connect, you have to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability is a strength, and it's something that we saw here in this film, and it's what connected us to her. It's what made us see, oh, I'm her. I think every single one of us in this room, there was something about her that we could connect with, because she showed that human side, and she showed I'm scared, but I'm gonna show up, right? And isn't that really what confidence is all about? It's believing that you can actually do something and then taking action and going for it, whether you are ready or not. And so that imposter syndrome, it gets a bad rap, but if we use it as fuel, it can really open us up to success that we didn't think was possible.
So I'm going to agree, but I'm going to say some other things alongside of that. And that is that, she does question it. And she says, what if, they ask me if I belong here? And she gets up there and they in fact ask her if she thinks she belongs there and if she can do that work. And I think that, that is a fairly unique gendered experience in the directness in which she experiences some of the questioning that she got. And, I've always said that if you can identify that the feelings that you have around not belonging in a space, not being welcomed, if you can see them rooted in the sexism, the racism, the structural and systemic things that prevent people from feeling like they belong, they really lose the power, because it's not about you. It's about something larger, and that you do belong there. And then she normalizes a very feminine coded way of being in leadership, which is what Kate and Jen spoke to, which is vulnerability. And she gives that power just by being herself and naming the things that make her uncomfortable and showing up as a human being. And so I think it's both, that personal side of claiming that we're anxious, that we're nervous, that we don't always believe in ourselves, but at the same time recognizing the systems and structures that kind of recreate that and reinforce that for some people more than others.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, so I won't repeat it. But I think the other thing for me that it does is really it engenders trust. And so I think in a day and age where a lot of maybe the general population, or at least the people, keyboard warriors, there's a lot of mistrust and a lack of trust in government and in politicians. And some of that is intentionally sown, as we saw some disinformation campaigns, and we have had it in Canada as well. But I think, again, this snapshot into her life, but then also just the snapshots where she's leading her own staff or her own party, and the words that she uses and how she shows up and how honest she is with them and how real she is. I think there's that element sometimes that I find lacking in my day-to-day, where you don't having that real conversation and being really honest in your emotions and what's going on with somebody. It connects you. And I think that that's something that we need more of in politics. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the time you're told not to act like that. And she even said, she's like, I have to put this face on, and I have to, be very neutral and diplomatic. And sometimes that's not what is needed. And again, she gave some really great examples where being that human being was the perfect response to a crisis, and in other ways. But again, throughout the whole movie, you saw that was just her. And I think it again restores some trust in politicians when you can see them being real people.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of moving on from the focus on women in leadership roles, are there lessons that we can take from this film about just leadership in general, and particularly in times of great polarization, the kind of toxicity that we're seeing right now. A lot of it fed by online disinformation and things like that. What are the lessons from this movie for leadership in challenging times, and how can we apply those lessons today?
One of the things that she said in that film was that you can lead and be kind. And I think that that's really important, because oftentimes, like on the internet, when I was a kid, we didn't have internet, right? I'm aging myself here. But I mean, if you had an issue or you needed to talk, you talked to people, right? Right now, we have the internet and people can hide behind the screen and say whatever they want and gather up as many followers as they can. And it's not authentic, it's not real, there's a lot of comparison. I'm a psychotherapist as well, and I see a lot of people in my office who are suffering with the comparison game, right? And they think less of themselves, and because they can't compare themselves to others. The point I'm trying to make is that if we can go back to being real, authentic, and kind, we can influence in real, authentic ways, right? And we can actually make a difference. I'm concerned with the way the world is working right now. Actually, this morning I was facilitating a training at the School of Social Work, and one of the things that I said that concerned me was how it feels as a Black woman in this body, how it feels right now that we're gone back 70 years, and how hurtful that is right now, and how much we need as social workers, because that's who I was talking to use our voices and advocate and be the people, use our positions to be able to speak in a way that's not with what the popularity is, what is popular, to do what is right. And that is what she did in this movie. We saw her do what was right. It might not have been popular, it might have been hurtful, but it was right. And I think if we can go back to being kind, doing what's right, being authentic, then that is kind of the recipe for leadership, and effective leadership.
Thank you. Shauna.
So one of the things that she does really well is she grounds her whole political career, her life, in her why of what she's doing and why she's there. And it really is about people. And when things are incredibly difficult in her leadership, but just the world in general, even now, that ability to know why you're doing what you're doing as a leader is so important, because in unprecedented times, which she obviously governed in, which we are in now, and which we often are, let's be real, it may not always be so much in our face, but things are constantly evolving and changing. It's like, why are you making the decisions that you are? And as Jen said, like, even when it's difficult, even when it's hard, even when it may not seem like it's right to everybody else, it's the right thing to do. And so in a time where there is so much misinformation, I think that's why she comes across as authentic, because she is. She knows why she's doing it. She knows what her guiding light is for leadership. And that transparency, that honesty, I think there's one point in the film where she expressly says, you tell them the truth. Right? Like, people deserve to know that that's a leadership style that's grounded in recognizing that people can, differentiate for themselves what is right and what is wrong, and to see the good and to handle the truth. It puts power back in people, and I think it builds solidarity in a way that more individualistic styles of leadership that power over hide in conspiracy theories, hide in misinformation, that seek to divide, don't. Even the more subtle forms of traditional styles of leadership that are very much like power over, to tell people what to do instead of to give them the information and explain, why you're making the decisions that you are. So the other thing I'll just say really quickly is, I think historically, if we look, there's always a backlash, right? Like the pathway to social change and social justice is not a linear one. And for every great strides, there is always going to be pushback. And to have that hope, that belief that things are going to be different, that things will improve, is what leads to social change. And so I think that she has that, and I think that's what good leaders have.
Yeah, this is definitely one that I struggle with a lot, I'll be honest, because I think our world has gotten very divided, as most of us can agree. And there's a lot of comfort in sitting with people that all agree with you, and everything you say, everyone's like, yeah, that. There's comfort in it, but there's not a lot of progress, and you don't get a lot of stuff done because you need the other folks in the room to also either maybe not agree with you, but maybe go along far enough that you could get to somewhere that is purposeful. So I find that trying to speak with people that don't agree with you and vice versa is hard, but it's always worth it. And in fact, I have to remind myself of that. Even sometimes with residents, I can tell that they're very mad and upset with me, or upset with the city, or upset with something that we're doing. And it's always better to have a conversation with them. I don't necessarily say, for example, online, I'm not going to have a long Facebook post back and forth debate with somebody, but I would much prefer to have a phone call or in-person meeting. Or Peggy was gracious enough to come and visit some of the residents in our area, and they're really upset about something going on. But after we were there and listened to them and had a conversation, I don't think it necessarily made them any happier, but they were happy to see us there and listening, and to say the truth. I explained what had gone on and what was happening and what the future would look like to the best of my knowledge, and I think that they just appreciated having the conversation, even though we weren't all going to agree on a solution. So I find it hard because maybe it's innate, but it's easier to just talk to people that agree with you, but where you actually get something done is talking with everyone. So
a similar wavelength for me, I sat there in the film watching, I don't know if this was in your minds too, why are they doing this? Like, why something so raw, so difficult? I saw an interview with her recently. She said the first time she saw it, she sobbed from beginning to end, like uncontrollable sobbing, because so many parts of it were so raw. So why share this? And after becoming after her resignation, she moved to the United States to do this fellowship and do her writing and so on. And I also remember thinking, why is she doing that? And it seemed a lot more clear to me now of why she is doing it, right? There were a lot of kind of American foils in the film, right? And I don't think those were, by accident. She is going to like the epicenter of democratic decline and polarization. She is speaking to students at some of the most prestigious universities in the country. She is writing prolifically, like 2 books this summer. That's nuts. Documentary out, speaking on the international circuit. Why is she doing that, right? Because exactly what was talked about, like her why is so true to her that it is not about one job, right? She was doing that when she worked, in the UK, like as a teenager for politicians. She's done a whole variety of things, and I think we're actually just still seeing the rise of Jacinda Ardern. My gosh, I hope so. And I love the idea that she is going to a place where it is so deeply divided that it almost feels like all hope is lost, and she is there with her fearless optimism, presenting a different kind of power, to use her title. To me, this is the most inspiring part of the leadership. She was an amazing prime minister. We got a vantage point of that. But this idea of really challenging norms of leadership and norms of politics and using the platform that she has to do that in the place where, in my personal opinion, it is most desperately needed right now was really, really inspiring.
Thank you very much. I have one more question, but I don't need this mic. I got my own mic. I have one more question, but I do want everybody to be aware that our panelists had not seen this film, so they agreed to sit on this panel and share their thoughts in real time with all of us. So I just want to say thank you once again for doing this. This is fantastic. But the final question I wanted to ask you about was her kind of parting thoughts about the importance of hope, the importance of compassion, the importance of kindness, the importance of empathy. These are traits that we typically associate with females. And she got some criticism for it. She, some viewed her as too emotional, too soft, like she didn't do the economy, is what they said in the legislature. And I know many of you in this room, like me, will recall Bill Clinton and him famously saying, "I feel your pain." And when Bill Clinton said it, it was key to his electoral success. It was not viewed as a weakness. So I just wondered if you'd like to share sort of, your final takeaways from the film on the differences between male and female approaches to leadership, especially around those core values of compassion and empathy and kindness, and how important are those traits in political leadership roles? So I think we're at Shauna first.
I guess in terms of the difference between Bill Clinton and Jacinda Ardern, well, they're so numerous, yeah. But in terms of like evoking that sense of empathy and care for people, I guess what the literature would say is that when men do it, it's kind of seen as a bonus to sort of the traditional style of leadership. They get the pat on the back, like, oh, and they're caring. Whereas women do it, it becomes like the whole personality, the whole politics, which in her case, and lots of cases, I actually think it is. And the reason that it gets denigrated is because we denigrate things that are seen as feminine. But the reality is that economics is care work. Foreign policy is care work, immigration is care work, gun control is care work. And so in terms of like what she actually accomplished, it wasn't just about, putting kindness and empathy out there. The policies that she actually implemented were kind, empathetic, and transformative policies, right? Grounded in those values that, that change things. And I think the only risk that I see in sort of her leadership is individualizing it to her instead of recognizing that, one, it's in lots of politics, it's in lots of people, and its power is not in the individual. The power is in the transformational piece of what it can mean for people's lives and for policy. And I know she knows that, I know we all know it, but I think that the media and whatnot can reduce it to an individual instead of that collectivist message that she's trying to put forward.
Yeah, well, and I'd say generally in politics, there's a lot of emotion. And I think that we highlighted like some perhaps that are seen as more feminine, but she also was angry and she got angry. And there's a lot of that in politics. I find too, at council, there's a lot of anger, maybe more anger than all the other emotions. I think that's actually where we get into a bit of a problem, is whereas anger is not seen as a feminine trait, but it's okay for, more male dominated workforces and for folks to be angry. But I think a broad range of emotions is both human but also very helpful. When you're mad, when you're sad, when you have joy, you want to change something, you want to do something about it, you want to take control and take action. I think that those are all great to tap into as a source for taking further action. So I find sometimes, around chambers, it's very emotional, but it's just very angry dominated. But I've cried before in a meeting, and it doesn't, you take a breath and it doesn't stop you from doing your job, but you find it as a source of power. So I think, again, they showed her having a broad range and how not easily, I'm sure it's hard for her, but how she was able to tap into that and use it. So I think we need more of it, but maybe just all emotions, and we can say we have all of them.
I think early on in the film, she used the phrase that we need to rehumanize one another. She returned to that again at the end, if I'm remembering the exact language. And we saw how she lived that, after the horrific Christchurch incident, right? Putting on a hijab, mourning with the victims, and then gun control legislation, like literally within days afterwards. But what does that look like as a prime minister? But when she was speaking, I think it was the bit from the convocation address, it was very much about the opportunity in front of every single one of us every single day, choosing kindness, choosing to see the human being in someone, even if they don't agree with you, listening carefully to someone with a different experience. And that was, to me, one of the most powerful things. She's doing that with this film, right? She's rehumanizing what's a politician. It's someone just like you who's picking out clothes and being, or, making your child a meal in the morning when you're rushing off to work. It's those things. And this opportunity to rehumanize, we cannot let it just sit with leaders at the highest level. It has to be a task that all of us take on, right? It's an everyday, in every interaction, and an opportunity to contribute to the kind of vision that she's talking about. And I loved how inclusively she painted that picture of leadership. It's not just about being an amazing prime minister. It's about choosing kindness and choosing to humanize the people around you tonight, tomorrow, in the people and the places and spaces where we are.
I think it goes a little bit further than male-female. I think we're socialized in a way where it's okay for women to show emotion more than it is for men in general. However, I think emotions are a good thing in that it gives us information, but it's what we do with those emotions. So I don't think necessarily it's emotions, it's more emotional intelligence. Like, how do we use our sense of self, and how do we manage ourselves, and how do we take care and empathize with other people, and how do we build and manage those relationships? So it's emotional intelligence. If we look in history at great leaders, whether male or female, from the outside it looks as though they have high emotional intelligence, right? And that's what allowed them to be vulnerable, and that's what allowed them to have people be influenced by them. So in my eyes, it goes beyond the male-female and more into the emotional intelligence and how we use our emotions to fuel ourselves to be able to move forward.
Okay. Well, thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you to everyone who came tonight to share this. And I especially want to say thank you to the students. I know there's a lot of young people who are here this evening, and I hope that you took something away from this movie that's going to really fortify you going forward in your own leadership journey. So thanks once again, and have a great evening.
It's also a municipal election next year. Should we tell them?
What?
It's a municipal election next year.
Sure.
Also, just want to say it's a municipal election next year, so if you're looking for a new job,